And the manager just says, what's going on here? And this woman said, she won't let us sit down. We want to go to sit down. And I said, but Mr. Batten, that was his name, Batten. And I said, it's Hitchcock.
Carol Burnett never forgave him. Now we know the reason why. For years, she lit up screens across the nation, week after week, with a charm so effortless it seemed almost magical. Her warmth, her grace, her seemingly limitless kindness made fans believe she had a heart incapable of holding grudges. People assumed she had forgiven every slight, every insult, every betrayal. That assumption? It was dead wrong. Even in her 90s, when most legends share only nostalgic stories, Carol revealed a secret she had buried deep, one that she had carried silently through an entire career. A revelation that would shock anyone who believed they truly knew her. There were men she never forgave. Men who publicly humiliated her, who schemed behind the scenes, who attempted to steal credit for the genius and brilliance that made her a household name. Their betrayals were not small, fleeting moments. They were wounds that lingered long after the stage lights dimmed and the laughter faded. Who were these men? What could possibly justify a lifetime of anger from someone as universally adored as Carol Burnett? How could the woman who made America laugh harder than anyone else harbor grudges so deep and personal? Stay with us, because the truth behind Carol Burnett's smile is darker, more complicated, and far more shocking than anyone could have ever imagined. What you think you know about her kindness is only the beginning. Cary Grant, the Hollywood gentleman who humiliated Carol Burnett. Picture this. You're standing in a glittering ballroom surrounded by Hollywood's brightest stars, the air thick with champagne, applause, and carefully curated smiles. Now imagine one of the most legendary icons in that room, someone the entire world reveres, chooses that exact moment to shatter your dignity. That was Carol Burnett's reality, and the man behind it was none other than Cary Grant. Of all the names rumored to sit on Carol Burnett's secret blacklist, Cary Grant's is the one that shocks people the most. Why? Because this was Hollywood at its absolute peak. The man with immaculate suits, effortless charm, and a magnetic presence that could disarm any crowd. Everyone wanted his approval, except her. The year was 1968. The set-in, a star-studded gala at the Beverly Hilton. Every smile rehearsed, every compliment performative, every handshake weighed for impact. Carol, fresh from conquering America's hearts with her comedy, was glowing with confidence. The world knew her as a force of joy, a woman who could make the nation laugh with a single gesture. And there, at the center of the room, sat Cary Grant, receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, radiant and untouchable. When the applause finally died down, Carol, ever the professional and filled with admiration, approached him to offer her congratulations. A director tried to ease the introduction, leaning in with a smile. "Cary, you've seen Carol's show. She has the whole country laughing." What happened next would haunt Carol for decades. Grant didn't pause. He smirked, and with a voice that carried just enough to reach nearby tables, he said, "Laughing at what? All she does is wave her arms and make faces. I don't see the appeal." Carol froze. She wasn't fragile. Hecklers and critics were nothing new, but this cut deeper than any onstage insult. This was not a stranger in the audience. This was a living legend, publicly dismantling her work in front of the elite of Hollywood. And the humiliation didn't stop there. As she turned to retreat, Grant leaned towards Elizabeth Taylor, delivering the final dagger with effortless charm. "She's not a real actress, just a housewife who got lucky." Every word perfectly measured, every ounce of malice disguised as refinement. Carol didn't respond. She didn't need to. The room buzzed, whispers spreading like wildfire, carrying the sting long after she had walked away. Later, in the safety of a friend's home, she confided, "I didn't hate him for disliking my comedy. I hated that he chose to humiliate me." The story didn't end there. Just 2 years later, Paramount came knocking with a dream opportunity, a co-starring role alongside Cary Grant in a major musical comedy. For any other actor, this would be a career-defining moment. For Carol, it was an impossible choice. Her team urged her to reconsider, but her answer was absolute. "I won't work with a man who belittles women." Cary Grant never apologized. Carol Burnett never forgave, and that, more than anything, sealed his place on her private list. The Hollywood gentleman whose charm couldn't mask cruelty, the star whose smile hid a sting that lingered for decades. Number 2 on Carol Burnett's jaw-dropping, almost unbelievable blacklist, Marlon Brando. Yes, that Marlon Brando, the Hollywood titan whose charm could melt the world, yet whose actions left Carol burned, humiliated, and furious. What he did to her was, well, it's the kind of story that stops you in your tracks, the kind that makes you question how even legends can betray. Brando is the biggest name on her secret list, the one fans struggle to believe. The icon, the powerhouse, the man whose every grin and whisper hit a sting sharp enough to wound Carol in a single phone call. A man whose aura was untouchable, yet whose behavior was utterly inexcusable. It all began in the sweltering summer of 1972. Brando was at the peak of his fame, untouchable after The Godfather, adored by millions, a man who could bend Hollywood to his will. Meanwhile, Carol was at home, peacefully asleep, when her housekeeper shook her awake. The phone was ringing relentlessly, slicing through the quiet of her morning. Groggy, still clinging to sleep, Carol answered and froze instantly. The voice on the other end? "Carol, this is Marlon Brando. I've been watching you." At first, she laughed nervously. Surely this had to be a prank. Brando was notorious for them. Hollywood practically ran on them. But then came the words that made her blood run cold. "You'd be even better if you loosened up, like the actresses I've spent time with." It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't playful banter. It was a loaded, humiliating jab from a man who thought he was untouchable. Carol ended the call with all the grace she could muster, but her hands were shaking and her mind raced. The nightmare didn't end there. The very next morning, a reporter called her publicist. Brando had praised her in that late-night phone call. The story leaked immediately. Brando had made it public. When asked about it, he smirked in his signature way and said she took it too seriously. Comedians are sensitive women. That was the moment Carol understood the truth. This wasn't admiration. This was humiliation. A man mocking the very work she had spent decades building. 2 days later, Carol confided to a friend, "I felt small, and I've spent my entire life fighting not to feel small." From that day on, Carol made one unbreakable rule with her team. If Marlon Brando is in the room, I'm not. And she kept that promise, without exception, for 30 years. 30 years of avoiding the man who had taken her dignity and made her feel like less than herself. Because some wounds, no matter how famous the culprit, never truly fade. Number 3 on Carol Burnett's jaw-dropping, almost unbelievable blacklist? Lorne Michaels, the man who for 50 years shut her out of Saturday Night Live. Yes, the very same SNL that redefined comedy for generations. How could two of television's biggest comedic powerhouses, icons in their own right, end up as strangers, even adversaries, without ever sharing a single stage? The truth is darker and far messier than anyone ever imagined, and it has nothing to do with professional respect or etiquette. The feud didn't start with a scandal or a public argument. It started with words. A single cutting remark that landed like a punch in Carol's career. A comment she heard once and never forgot. To understand the weight of that moment, we have to go back to 1975. It was the year Saturday Night Live burst onto the airwaves, shaking the television world. Meanwhile, Carol was at the peak of her reign on CBS, dominating late-night audiences with her own groundbreaking variety show. Critics and fans alike were unanimous. If anyone had the talent, the wit, and the charisma to host SNL, it was Carol. But it never happened. Not because she wasn't interested, not because she was too busy. The real reason was buried in a private meeting inside NBC's walls, a meeting most of the public would never hear about. During a pitch session for SNL's second season, an editor casually floated her name. What about Carol Burnett? She'd make history. Then came Lorne Michaels' infamous response, delivered with a smirk that could chill the room. Not her. She's the face of old television. over my dead body. Harsh? Absolutely. But Lorne didn't stop there. A staffer later recalled him adding almost gleefully, "Her kind of comedy makes us look outdated. SNL isn't a retirement home." The words made their way to Carol. And how did she react? Not with confrontation, not with public outrage. She went silent. Ice cold, a quiet, devastating withdrawal that spoke louder than any press statement could. She later told the network in her own measured way, "I spent my life opening doors for women in comedy. He slammed one without even meeting me." That single moment cemented a rift that would last decades. Over the years, NBC tried to patch things up, offering Carol a place in SNL's 10th anniversary special. But Lorne's response was final and brutal. In a handwritten note, he wrote, "Not relevant, not funny, not happening." Carol never kept the note, but the sting lingered for decades. By 2023, when asked if she regretted never hosting SNL, Carol smiled, not with bitterness, but with quiet triumph. "They didn't need me, and I learned I didn't need them either." That was her final punch, the one that left the bridge between her and Lorne unbuilt forever. Number 4 on Carol Burnett's hidden blacklist, Harvey Korman. The man audiences loved alongside her, yet the one who delivered a betrayal she never saw coming. On paper, Harvey was untouchable, the perfect comedic partner, the co-star who could make viewers howl with laughter. But Harvey Korman occupies the 4th spot on Carol's private list of men she came to quietly resent. And the shocker? Nobody, no one, ever imagined he could hurt her. Their on-screen connection was electric. A comedic dream team, the kind of duo Hollywood assumed would be inseparable forever. Yet all that trust and laughter came crashing down one seemingly ordinary afternoon in 1974. Studio 33 hummed with routine. Petula Clark had just finished her run-through. The lighting crew adjusted the rigs, and Harvey prepared for a sketch he had performed countless times without issue. Everything appeared normal, but beneath the surface, tension was brewing, and Carol had no idea. It started small, a minor lighting glitch, nothing that should have mattered. But Harvey's reaction was explosive. He threw his script to the floor, his voice cutting through the studio like a knife. "How hard is it to get this right? I'm sick of cleaning up her mistakes." Every word landed squarely on Carol. The laughter, the camaraderie, the trust they had built over years, it all shattered in a heartbeat. Carol froze, shock locking her in place before anger could even surface. She walked toward him, her steps steady but her heart hammering, and asked quietly, trembling just beneath her calm exterior, "Harvey, why speak to them like that?" His reply was icy, venomous, and utterly unexpected. "Maybe I'm done being second on the Carol Burnett show." Those words were daggers, cutting deeper than any on-set joke or insult ever could. Jealousy, ambition, resentment, emotions Carol had never suspected were simmering under Harvey's genial exterior had exploded in that single moment. Heartbroken, she retreated to her dressing room, locking the door behind her, and let the tears fall in solitude, away from the laughter of the studio. 3 days later, Harvey returned offering a shaky, almost fragile apology. "I forgot why I started comedy." True to her nature, Carol forgave him. Forgiveness came easily to her. It always had. But as she later confided to Vicki Lawrence, forgiving him didn't fix what broke. The cameras continued to roll, the audience continued to laugh, and yet the bond that had once felt unbreakable was fractured forever, leaving a scar that lingered long after the applause faded. Number 5. Joe Hamilton, the husband who stole far more than just her heart. Behind the sparkle, laughter, and glitz of the Carol Burnett show, Joe Hamilton was quietly building a secret empire fueled by Carol's brilliance. He takes the 5th spot on her private, unspoken list of men she could never fully forgive, because this betrayal came not from a stranger, not from Hollywood intrigue, but from inside her own home. To the world, Joe was her husband, her partner, her ally in television. Together, they seemed unstoppable. But behind the closed doors of their home, the man she trusted most was quietly reshaping her legacy and turning it into his personal gain. The truth came crashing down in 1982, years into a marriage already fraying. Carol's lawyer, combing through legal paperwork, stumbled upon a revelation that hit like a punch. Joe had launched Hamilton Productions, claiming several spin-off ideas from the Carol Burnett show as entirely his own. One project in particular, Mama's Family, was drawn almost entirely from Carol's iconic character. Yet Carol's name, her creativity, her ownership was nowhere to be found. When Carol confronted him at CBS, expecting honesty, Joe leaned back, crossed his arms, and said words that would echo in her mind for decades. "You're the talent. I'm the brain. I know how to handle business." It wasn't just arrogance. It was a confession. He had quietly set himself up to profit off her genius, while she carried both the show and their family on her shoulders. Weeks later, the sting deepened. Carol overheard CBS staffers whispering about Joe and a younger editor he'd been secretly seeing. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal, ongoing, happening right under her nose for years. That night, sitting alone at her dining table, Carol faced a painful truth. "I don't recognize the man I married." The divorce followed, a grueling, drawn-out legal battle over the profits of her own creations, leaving her drained both emotionally and professionally. When Joe died in 1991, Carol skipped the funeral entirely, sending only white flowers and a simple note, "I wish you peace." Privately, she admitted, "Some wounds don't heal with time. They just linger quietly." Carol Burnett gave the world laughter, warmth, and joy, but these 5 men left scars the cameras never captured. Which of these betrayals do you think cut the deepest? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking Hollywood secrets.